Before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps us out.
He didn't even look up when he said it. I just think maybe it's better if you don't come, for everyone's sake. I was folding napkins when Jason told me I wasn't welcome at his wedding. Not crying, not complaining, just folding napkins at his kitchen table, smoothing down the creases like I'd done 1,000 times before. His kitchen was too clean, all sharp corners and cold marble. Nothing soft, nothing lived in. Nothing like the home he'd grown up in. I just think, he said, clearing his throat, it might be easier if you didn't come. At first, I didn't understand. I looked up at him slowly, still holding a pale blue linen square in my hand. His eyes weren't on me. They were fixed on the floor, or maybe on the thought of me being there, walking down the aisle with my cane, ruining the look of his aesthetic. You don't want me at the wedding? I said, blinking. He didn't flinch. Mum, don't take it personally. It's just, Audrey's vision is really modern, really elegant, and she's worried. I waited. That part of him had always irritated me. The way he used ellipses when he spoke, like he was editing his words in real time. She's worried about what? I asked. He sighed. You've been having a hard time lately. And with the cane, and sometimes you forget things or repeat yourself. And you know, the photos are forever. My throat burned. So are Mother's. He looked up. That caught him off guard. But only for a second. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. Of course you're important. Of course. It's just, this is Audrey's big day, I wanted to ask. When did it stop being yours, too? But I didn't. I just nodded, folded the last napkin, and placed it on the growing stack. I left his house without another word, and for the first time in my life, I didn't look back. My name is Lorraine Harrow. I am 67 years old. I raised my son alone after my husband, Charles, died in a car accident when Jason was 7. For most of my life, I worked as a school librarian at Fairview Middle, the kind of job people forget exists until someone needs the printer jammed. I've never dyed my hair. It's silver now, naturally so, which Audrey once described as quaint, while laughing into a wine glass the size of her head. I walk with a cane after 2 surgeries on my left hip, and I wear orthopedic shoes because I have bunions the size of walnuts. I do not sparkle on Instagram. I do not belong in styled wedding shoots. But I was a damn good mother. I never remarried. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was never time. Between Jason's school, his baseball games, the parent-teacher conferences, the chicken pox, the asthma attacks, the college prep, all of it. I just kept putting myself off until one day I looked up and realized it was too late. My body was older than my hope. I poured everything I had into Jason. Every savings bond, every sick day, every silent night when I wanted to cry but didn't. I took out a second mortgage to help him buy his first house. I co-signed his first car loan. I helped raise his son while he and Audrey were off in Bali on a spiritual reset. And now, at the end of it all, I wasn't good enough for the pictures. The morning after he told me, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my coffee until it went cold. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but nothing came. Just this dull buzzing in my ears, like grief had short-circuited something in me. At noon, Marcus came by with Meals on Wheels. He's in his 30s, has 2 daughters, and a tired smile that reminds me of my brother when we were kids. He placed the tray on my counter and noticed I hadn't touched last week's delivery. Everything okay, Miss Lorraine? I nodded too fast. Of course, just not hungry today. He looked concerned, but didn't push. Well, I brought banana pudding this time. Thought of you? He left it on the counter and smiled. Take care now. I waited until he drove away before I dumped the tray into the bin. I didn't want his pity. I didn't want anyone's. I wanted to feel something: anger, fury, anything. Instead, I felt like the air had gone out of my life. On Wednesday, I went to St. Agnes for midweek service. I didn't go for the sermon. I just needed to sit in a place that remembered me. The pews creaked like they always had, and the windows still glowed with dusty blues and reds from the stained glass. I sat in the back and closed my eyes. Afterward, I saw Marcia Holloway near the vestibule. She'd been on the flower committee with me years ago, still wore that bright red lipstick and pearl clip-ons like she was on her way to a dinner party. "Lorraine," she said, pulling me into a hug. "You look thin." "I'm fine," I lied. "Jason's wedding's coming up, isn't it?" she asked. I hesitated. "I'm not going." She blinked. Oh, I'm sorry." "It's all right." There was an awkward pause before she said, "You know, they're having it at Rosebrook Vineyards. My cousin Trudy used to run that place before she passed." "I didn't know. It's a shame, really. Place is going under. Kids don't care about history, just want fairy lights and photo booths." My ears perked. "Going under?" Mm-hmm. "They've been trying to sell it for over a year. Whole estate's a money pit. Beautiful, though. Old money bones. You should see the ballroom." I smiled politely, but something in my chest stirred. The first flicker of something warm. When I got home, I searched online. Rosebrook Vineyards, 12,000 square feet. Original plantation home, 10 acres of vines. Listed at $2.1 million, but motivated seller. I called the number. The agent, a young man with a plastic voice, offered me a private viewing the next morning. Just for fun, I told myself. But when I stood in the middle of that grand ballroom, with its chipped crown molding and dusty chandeliers, I felt something I hadn't in years. I felt possibility. The papers went through in 2 weeks. Turns out, my Charles left more behind than I thought. An old life insurance policy I never cashed, a forgotten stock account from his short time at Belmore Group, some bonds I never touched. When I added my retirement savings, I had just enough to cover the purchase and the taxes. I was never much of a risk taker. But something about that place, crumbling and ignored, just like me, felt like home. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. Let them plan. Let them pose. Let them spend Audrey's father's money on monogrammed napkins and lavender centerpieces. Because on the morning of the wedding, when they arrived to walk the grounds and take their golden hour portraits, they would find me sitting on the front porch, keys in hand. The owner. The mother, the one who wasn't good enough for the photos. The realtor's voice was chirpy on the phone. "Well, Lorraine, the title's finalized, and the keys will be delivered to you on Friday." Friday. 2 days before the wedding. Perfect. I had them couriered to my house in a little velvet pouch, which felt a touch ridiculous. I opened it at the kitchen table, laid the heavy iron skeleton key flat on the wood, and just stared at it. It was old, possibly original, cold in the center but slightly warm at the tip from the sun. Jason hadn't called, hadn't texted. Nothing. I could see it all unfolding in my head. How they'd show up to the venue, giggling and golden and late, a white SUV full of flower girls and champagne. How the wedding planner would walk up the steps, clipboard in hand. And how I would be sitting there on that porch swing, hair set, lipstick on, a pale pink dress like the one I wore the day I first took him to preschool. Only this time, I wouldn't be holding his hand. I'd be holding the deed. Saturday came. I woke before sunrise. My hands shook as I buttoned my dress, the same one I wore to my niece's wedding 4 years ago. Pale rose, elbow-length sleeves, silk that still held its shape even after so many wears. My best pearls. A new pair of orthopedic heels I'd been saving for something special. I wasn't going to ruin their day. I wasn't going to scream or sob. But I wasn't going to disappear. either. I arrived at Rosebrook before anyone else. The place looked better than it had 2 weeks earlier, still tired around the edges, but noble. The vines were thick with early summer green, and the white columns out front stood like sentinels. It was mine now. I'd had the locks changed the night before, just in case. At 8:17 a.m., a silver van rolled up. "Morning," a bright voice called. A young woman stepped out with a stack of chairs and a clipboard. "You the owner?" she asked. I smiled. "I am." She squinted at me. "You're not, Sharon?" "No, Sharon sold it. I closed last week. I'm Lorraine." Her mouth opened, closed. "But the wedding, Jason and Audrey Harrow? They're booked." "No contract. Just a tentative date held with no payment. Check the file." She fumbled through a yellow folder, and I saw her eyes widen. "Oh my God. They didn't pay the deposit." "No, they didn't." The first real sign of trouble came around 9. Audrey's mother arrived in a powder blue Lexus. She stepped out in heels too high for gravel and clutched a bundle of garment bags. "Excuse me," she said, in a voice I'm sure had scolded many a waiter. "Where are the dressing rooms?" I smiled from the porch. "Closed." She looked up, confused. "I'm sorry? I own the property now," I said softly. "They never secured the date. No deposit, no contract." Her face turned the color of the crab bisque she once served me in silence. "I don't understand. We confirmed this months ago with the previous owner, who accepted better terms from me." She opened her mouth, then stopped. "You're Lorraine." "Yes." "Jason's mother." "Yes." She looked at me like I was a ghost crawling out of the grapevines. You you bought the venue?" "I did." She staggered backward half a step, blinking. "Why?" she whispered, genuinely bewildered. I didn't answer. She fumbled for her phone and walked 10 feet away to call someone. Jason, I assumed. Her voice cracked through the air, sharp as glass. I sat down on the porch swing and rocked gently, the rhythm of my mother's porch in Tennessee, years and years ago. It felt good to swing again. They all arrived within the hour, Jason in a navy blue suit, wrinkled already at the collar. Audrey in rollers, shouting into her phone. Her sister, the bridesmaids, her father, the photographer. Chaos blooming like rot. Jason was the first to storm toward me. "What the hell, Mom?" "Good morning," I said. "You bought the venue?" "I did." "You knew we were getting married here?" "I did." His hands flew up. "Why?" "You told me I wasn't invited." He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He looked like a boy again, angry, embarrassed, unsure if he should cry or scream. I let the silence hold. Finally, he whispered, "You did this to get back at me." "No," I said calmly. "I did it to get back to myself." His jaw clenched. "You ruined everything." "No," I repeated. "You did." Audrey approached next. Her mascara was smudged already, hair half curled, lipstick like a battle line. "You have no right—" "Actually," I said, pulling a small envelope from my purse, "I have the deed." I handed her a copy. She didn't take it. "Jason," she hissed, turning to him. "Fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said. "You don't have a venue." "You're a bitter old woman," she snapped. "I knew you'd do something selfish." That was the moment I smiled, not smugly, just peacefully. "I raised your husband alone. I put him through school. I paid for his first car, his first home. And when you asked me to sit out of the most important day of his life because my cane didn't fit your aesthetic, I sat quietly." Jason looked down. Audrey's mouth curled. "You want us to beg?" "No," I said gently. "I want you to leave." They eventually packed up. Jason didn't look at me again. Audrey stormed to the car, still shouting, still blaming. Her mother said nothing, just stared at me like she couldn't believe women like me still existed. I stayed on the porch until the last vehicle left the gravel lot. At 1:22 p.m., the birds came back. A pair of finches landed on the banister near my cane. I sat there and watched them for a long time. 2 days later, a letter arrived. No return address, just my name on the front. It was from Jason. Mom! I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I was trying to make everyone happy and forgot the one person who always tried to make me happy. You didn't deserve that. Audrey and I are postponing the ceremony. She's furious, but I don't care. I need time to think. I miss you. Jason. I didn't respond. Instead, I called a contractor. I wanted to restore Rosebrook, not to rent out again, but to live in. For the first time in my life, I had something that was just mine. The back rooms could be converted into a small suite. The vines could grow wild again if they pleased. I had the place appraised for improvements. My pension could cover the upkeep, barely. I'd live frugally. But I'd live. In the evenings, I walked the halls barefoot. The silence wasn't hollow anymore. It was earned. Marcia came by one afternoon with peach cobbler. "Heard what you did," she said, grinning like a teenager. "The whole town's buzzing." "Let them buzz," I said. "You ever think about turning it into a women's retreat?" she asked. "There's funding for that sort of thing. Grants, older women, healing, all that good Oprah stuff." I laughed. Maybe. But that night, the idea stuck. A house for women like me. Women who'd poured themselves dry and were looking for a place to fill back up. I didn't go to their rescheduled wedding. I wasn't invited, but this time I didn't care. I didn't expect the silence afterward to feel like peace. At first, it was strange. Waking up without the weight of waiting. No notifications, no apologies, no new wounds disguised as concern. I thought I'd feel emptier, like I'd burned the last bridge and was stuck on an island of my own making. But the longer I spent at Rosebrook, the more I realized I'd been on that island for years. I just hadn't claimed it until now. I moved in 3 weeks after the wedding. That wasn't. The contractors did a lovely job refinishing the old servants' quarters into a modest apartment. 1 bedroom, 1 bath, a little kitchenette with copper pans and mismatched mugs I found at an estate sale. I left the ballroom untouched. I liked it the way it was, huge, echoing, slightly broken, honest. Sometimes I'd walk through it barefoot, the old wood cool against my feet. There was a softness to the air in that room, a heaviness that didn't crush so much as settle around you, like a quilt. That house had been through so much, and it was still standing. So was I. Jason didn't write again, but his wife did. A crisp white envelope, gold seal, Audrey's handwriting on the front, deliberate, elegant, the kind of cursive you learn from invitation samples. Inside, 1 line. "You made your point? Congratulations?" No dear, no sincerely, no name. Just that. It didn't sting like I thought it might. If anything, it felt like a confession. She'd wanted me to be small. And I wasn't. She knew it now. That was enough. Marcus, the Meals on Wheels driver, stopped by one day with a different delivery. A thank you basket from the county volunteer office. Word had spread that I'd cancelled my meals because I was restoring a mansion. "Well, aren't you just the town mystery now?" he joked, placing the basket on my porch table. I offered him a cup of tea, and for once he said yes. We sat there while the wind rustled through the vines. He asked about the history of the place, and I told him everything I knew, about the original owners, about the war letters found in the attic, about the woman who used to host underground poetry salons in the 1960s. She did. His eyebrows rose. That's kind of badass. She was. I paused. I think I might do something similar. Maybe not poetry, but something. For women, Marcus nodded. Like a retreat? Exactly. We sat in comfortable silence for a bit. He looked out over the fields and said, "You know, this place suits you." And somehow, I believed him. I didn't start Rosebrook Retreat with fanfare. There was no ribbon cutting, no launch party. Just a flyer I printed myself and left on the bulletin board at St. Agnes, the grocery store, and the senior centre. It read, "Rosebrook Retreat for Women, a quiet space to rest, write, walk, or just be. Priority given to women over 50 seeking change, healing, or quiet companionship. No cost, no judgment, no pressure." The first woman who came was named Della, 62, recently divorced after 41 years. Her husband left her for someone more adventurous. She carried a suitcase full of novels and a pair of walking shoes that had never touched dirt. The second was Maria, a retired nurse. She had early-stage Parkinson's and a laugh like wind chimes. She baked bread every morning, said it helped her remember her hands. Then came Lois, Jeanette, Pearl. The house filled slowly, like warm water in a cold bath. And suddenly, I wasn't alone anymore. One evening, I hosted dinner in the ballroom. Just a folding table, mismatched chairs, and a dozen tea lights in old jars. Maria brought garlic bread. Jeanette made stew. Pearl, who barely spoke, played old records from a dusty collection she'd carried in her car trunk since 1984. And we danced. Old knees, bad backs, no rhythm. We danced anyway. I watched them twirl beneath the chandeliers, laughing like they were 17. And for the first time in years, I felt young. Not in body, but in spirit. I'd spent so much of my life trying not to take up space. Now I had a whole house full of women learning to stretch out again. Jason finally called 2 months later. It was a Thursday. I was rearranging the front room, turned it into a tiny lending library with donations from St. Agnes. My phone rang, and I almost didn't recognize the number. "Hi, Mom." That voice, softer than I remembered. "Jason, I heard about the retreat. Audrey told me." A pause. "She's not happy." "No," I said. "I don't imagine she would be." Another pause. "I deserved what you did." I said nothing. "I was trying to keep the peace," he continued. "Keep everyone happy. I didn't realize I'd cut you out just to do it." "You didn't realize?" I repeated, my voice even. "I'm sorry." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "She says you humiliated her," he said. "She humiliated herself." Silence again. "I want to visit," he said. "For what?" "I miss you." That cracked something. Not the old grief. Something gentler, something like Thor. "You can come," I said. "But you come alone. You come honest." "I will." "I'm not the same woman who folded napkins at your kitchen table." "I know." And I believed him. He came the following Sunday. No suit, no excuses, just Jason. He walked the vineyard with me in the late afternoon. I showed him the guest rooms, the chapel nook I was building out of the old pantry. He ran his hand along the banister and smiled. "This place feels like you." "No," I said. "I feel like me now." We sat on the porch steps, sharing ginger snaps and silence. He turned to me and said, "You know, you always had the power, didn't you?" "I always had the heart," I said. "I just forgot it was enough." He nodded. "I'm not angry anymore?" I added. "But I won't disappear to make room for someone else's comfort again." "You shouldn't," he said. And that was the first thing he'd said in years that felt like my son. By autumn, the vines began to bronze. The whole estate softened in color. Dusty gold, rust, late plum. I'd lived through 67 harvests, but this one tasted different. I wasn't collecting memories for anyone else anymore. I was living them for me. The women kept coming. Not in crowds. We weren't a resort. We didn't do yoga at sunrise or juice cleanses or empowerment selfies. But we had something better. Della came back after spending a month in Oregon with her sister. Maria started a book club in the upstairs lounge. Pearl, dear quiet Pearl, taught us how to knit in circles. She never married, never wanted to. I envied her clarity. On the last Saturday of October, we hosted a small craft fair on the lawn. Locals came with scarves, homemade jam, soap cut like honeycomb. I watched an elderly woman haggle over a spice rack with the confidence of a Wall Street broker. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the vines, the porch filled with laughter. Not the polite kind, but the full-bellied, curtain-rattling kind. And I thought, this is what legacy really is. Not bloodlines, not names etched on wedding programs, but space. Space that heals, that remembers, that allows. Jason visited once a month. Never Audrey. He'd come with a basket, fruit, sometimes pastries, and sit with me in the garden. We didn't talk about the wedding, or the venue, or how everything that broke between us started long before a save the date card ever went out. Instead, we talked about his son, my grandson. Nathan. 9 years old, loves baseball, Legos, dinosaurs, hates homework, hates when his mum calls him sweetie in public. A real boy. You'd love him, Jason said once. I already do. He stayed longer every time he came, helped rake leaves, replaced a leaky faucet. Once, he even stayed for dinner, sitting at the folding table while Pearl told a story about hiding cash in her freezer during the 70s. He laughed. Honest, real. The kind of laugh I remembered from before Audrey. Before corporate suits and stone countertops and curated family images. The boy was still in there, and slowly, he was coming back. I didn't expect what came in November. A letter, handwritten, smudged in places, from Audrey. Lorraine, we're divorcing. You probably knew before I did. I didn't come from a family that forgave. I came from one that performed. Image was everything. What we wore, what we ate, who we were seen with. I thought love looked like control, like curation. I'm sorry. You scared me, not because you were weak, but because you were something I couldn't manipulate. I hope Nathan meets you someday. Sincerely, Audrey. I read it 3 times. The first time with suspicion, the second with disbelief, the third with quiet understanding. I folded it gently and placed it in the small tin where I kept letters worth remembering, not because of what they said, but because of what they revealed. December brought snow, soft at first, like sifted sugar across the shingles, then thick, wet, heavy. The house groaned in some places, but held. I spent Christmas with the women. We roasted 2 chickens, not a turkey. No one liked turkey. We strung yarn stars across the windows. We sang badly and laughed well. At midnight, I stood on the back porch and looked out over the vineyard. The moon caught the frost just so. Silver light on silver land. I closed my eyes and whispered a thank you to no one in particular. Thank you for the ruin. Thank you for the breaking. Thank you for what came after. In the spring, I met Nathan. Jason brought him one Saturday afternoon. I opened the door and there he was, all knees and elbows, eyes wide, mouth already moving before I could say hello. You're the grandma with the castle, right? I laughed. Something like that. He hugged me before I could prepare, just wrapped his skinny arms around my waist and said, My other grandma doesn't like dirt, but you have dirt everywhere. It's awesome. I showed him the vines, the birds, the bees in the lavender. He asked 100 questions and I answered them all. When he saw the ballroom, he ran through it in circles. This is like Hogwarts. That night, he asked if he could sleep over sometime. Jason smiled nervously. I smiled with my whole heart. You're welcome any time, I told him. This is your house too. I didn't know what revenge would look like when I bought that house. I didn't imagine chandeliers or folded letters or a boy running through echoing halls. I just knew I didn't want to vanish. Now I understand what I was really after. Not vengeance, visibility. I didn't need to ruin them. I needed to remember me. I was never the villain. I was the architect, the constant, the warmth. And now I was home. The women sometimes ask me how I did it, how I survived the betrayal, the silence, the banishment from the very family I'd built. I always say the same thing, because they underestimated the wrong woman. And that's all there is to it, really. They saw an old woman with a cane, but I was a storm with silver hair. The Rosebrook retreat became something real. Not famous, not fancy, just real. A woman named Brenda came to stay after losing her sister. Another, called Eileen, came after her adult daughter stopped speaking to her. They didn't need therapy. They needed space, quiet, soup, blank journals. They needed each other, and so did I. We paint, we cry, we walk the vines barefoot in summer. Sometimes we even dance in the ballroom, shoes off, music low. I never did remarry. Never felt the need. Love comes in many forms. And now, it shows up every day in lemon bars left on my windowsill, in notes tucked under my door, in arms around my waist, and a boy calling me grandma as he drips grape juice across my clean floors. That's the life I live now. And every time someone thanks me for it, I say, "No, dear, thank you.